Terence McKenna. I had the great fortune of being a personal friend with him and spent some quality time speaking. I clearly remember on an occasion that we spoke about this. He said that in the Amazon, where the people are raised with the plants, the lessons already incorporated into people's life. So being such a foreign thing and such, like we're not raised with amongst a sacred cultural way of life. A lot of us are like, oh my God, this is nuts. Like consumer culture, industrial revolution. We want like to return permaculture back to the land, but that still doesn't mean we're raised in a sacred way of life. Even we have that desire to return. So the ayahuasca is so foreign to the modern mind. And then like, we have to find a justification, excuse. It's very hard for modern people to just like throw it into the wind and go, we're all one, like just haha, laugh while you're dying, like a lot of the people that serve it don't prepare it. If you're not preparing your own medicine, you don't really know what you have.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to another episode of the Psychedelic Conversations. We have a returning guest in the house today. Welcome, Jonathon. It's a pleasure to have you.
Thank you so much, Susan, and to all the listeners.
Thank you for being here and creating this time to spend with us and share your wisdom. And just for the context, I want to say a few things about you, Jonathon, for our listeners, in case this is their first time meeting you. And like I said, you are a returning guest. This is our second conversation, and we will add the first conversation link in the show notes so they can check that out as well.
Mm-hmm.
So Jonathon is a facilitator and the author of the Rainforest Medicine, and he is the book is covering on the preserving indigenous science and biological diversity in the Upper Amazon.
Mm-hmm.
He spent his past 25 years more in the learning and facilitating and practicing these indigenous ways of medicine. So this is a really good time to revisit Jonathon's work, and I really appreciate the latest blog that he's gifted us. Jonathon, before we dive in, just to give more insight into your background, what brings you to the medicine for our listeners before we dive into your blog?
Well, I was raised in Ecuador, and when I was a young lad, I think like about 12 years old or so, you could say he's a little bit on the wild side. And back then in Ecuador too, it was like there's a whole different reality than it is today. Just the nature of the way things were, just pretty much alone, you to just do whatever the hell you pleased. And so at 12 years old, like unleashed and a little too much for my parents. So they were like, my mom had a friend who was an ethnobotanist, who I'm sad to say I reached out on all the social medias, but I've never been able to re-encounter him again. But he was visiting indigenous community in the Amazon, of Ecuadorian Amazon. My mom sent me with him. In those days, there was now these like tunnels blasted to the road from the town of Baños down to Puyo. The family lived in the outskirts of Puyo. And the road was very windy and cliff face going down, and so the buses would go to the church, and the pastor or the father would put holy water in the radiators and bless the buses before they went down. It's pretty classic. So yeah, I drank the medicine of the ayahuasca the first time when I was like 12 years old with my mother's friend. He said to me, I'm, going to be gone all night and you have to stay here in this little house alone. I was like, Are you crazy? So he's like, I was like, I'm not staying here alone. He's like, you have to stay. Nothing's gonna happen. We'll be fine. I'll be back tomorrow. So I was like, well, he'll see. Well, I guess we'll see about that. So he walked off, and I snuck after him quietly, and ended up at the ceremony lodge. And the tradition mandates that once someone arrives at the lodge, they have to drink or stay there all night. So next thing you know, I'm drinking the ayahuasca when I was just about 11 or 12 years old. So that was the first time I had the experience. And then later, we moved to the United States when I was 15. I went up to study at in Northern California. This is ages ago now, botany and music at Humboldt State University. But I just started feeling this energy in the rainforest, and I wanted to go back since I was studying botany in particular. And I did an exhibit at the library about the medicinal plants of the rainforest, and put a little exhibit together. It wasn't long after that I started, finding avenues to get back, and found the connection of a group working on conservation, two different organizations, one that was starting a medicinal plant garden, another that was about to work with the Waorani indigenous group on the demarcation of their lands. And I got in touch with them, and both invited me to come down. And anyway, 1 year leave of absence from college in 1990 turned into 10 years, 10 years in the Amazon. And I never really went looking for the medicine when I came back. It wasn't like I went back to Ecuador to drink Yahweh. I went back to save the rainforest. And because when I had studied at Humboldt State University, a very strange thing or synchronicity occurred, that if synchronicities occur, whatever that, connection happened. So I met a gentleman during lunch who was raving about Ecuador and how in the rainforest they're destroying the rainforest, the oil companies, and we need volunteers to help gather signatures. And I was just 17, fresh in college, and I was like, oh, of course, I'm raised in Ecuador. Yeah, so I started gathering signatures, helping helping for these denouncements of nefarious activities of oil companies on indigenous lands. We'd get signatures and send to this organization in San Francisco, the Rainforest Action Network. Who knows what they would do with it, but probably try to pressure someone to governments. But I mean, anyway, but what impact it has, who knows, because that's a whole other story. After some time, the fellow who was organizing this came up to me and said, "Hey man, we're cousins." I was like, "We're not cousins, we're brothers." He's like, no, I wrote my grandmother. And she said, "Ask him if your mom is named Esther and your father Leonard. And if he has a sister named Laden, if so, then you're cousins." So it turned out that Dan Close and I were cousins. He got me. So that was too cool. I was like, oh, my long lost cousin, recruits me on campus. But when I went back to Ecuador, I went specifically out of concern to try to ameliorate, somehow be involved in rainforest conservation. And I had drunk ayahuasca when I was 11 years old, and I knew about it, and I'd read about it. Like I read the book, The Wizard of the Upper Amazon and the Rio Tigre Beyond, and I was studying botany. I knew all about it, but it wasn't, I don't know, it didn't call me. I wasn't interested. I'm not going to Ecuador to drink Yahweh or learn out about ayahuasca. I went to go specifically to see how it could be a part of protecting the ecology. That was always my first interest. And then one thing led to another. And, I was invited to work on a project with, a bunch of things happened. But eventually, basically, I was invited by the elders to drink because we were working on projects to help secure their ancestral homelands. And next thing you know it, we're drinking the Yahweh and that. So I went in through that avenue. Mm-hmm.
Thank you so much.
I gave a talk once at the Envision Festival. And I had two talks. One was on rainforest conservation strategies. The other was on ayahuasca and Yahweh. At the Rainforest Conservation Strategies talk, only about 5 or 10, less than 10 people came. At the one on ayahuasca and Yahweh, there was 350 or 400 people.
What do you think is going on there? Well, everyone's interested.
Fortunately, the first one was the talk on rainforest conservation. The second was on ayahuasca because it had me thinking. So my talk started, and I was just sitting there for a while. Even someone said, "You can start now." And I said, "No, I know I can start. I'm just wondering what to say because I'm a little perplexed why there's only less than 10 people at the conservation talk and hundreds at the ayahuasca talk." So I'm glad I told the whole group. I'm glad that I gave that talk first so I could see this pattern. And so I'm going to start by saying this. If you're all that interested in ayahuasca to come and talk to it, and you eventually have the opportunity to drink the heroic dose, I bet you money next time you'll be at the conservation talk.
Yes, I guess. Do you mean that because of the trending, because of the mainstreaming, people are interested in coming from a consumerism mindset, like I want to find it, drink it, learn about it, then but you're saying the conservation of the rainforest is kind of like the foundation that we need to learn first. We need to learn about where this medicine is coming, the traditions, and
of course, well, I mean, conservation is the complicated thing. Most people, I'm sure everyone at the Ayahuasca talk are concerned about the forest. Just sometimes people don't have an avenue or a way through, or even though so that's a more complicated thing. But also we can look at it as the plant medicine in a way is like the most recent evolution of the rainforest, reaching out to save itself through us, basically. Looking like this, like network of like the mycelial network is spread across the globe to help prove the truth of unity. But it's, ultimately nothing. I mean, from a transcendental perspective, there's nothing to save because nothing exists. Like the sound of one hand clapping. If we drink Yahweh, it's all just a serious joke. It's just like we're all going to get crunched and sucked into some black hole. And now, they discovered that the black holes are like way bigger than we thought, and also that before the black, this is just. Yeah, the Big Bang existed. Now that like all the scientists are saying we're sorry on this like YouTube channels, the James Webb telescope, that before the Big Bang there was another, universe, and so it's just an eternal continuum. Life, this phenomena we call existence, and it just undergoes eternal transformation. So,
So, Jonathon, so would you say it's a lack of education rather than 10 people attending to your rainforest reservation talk as opposed to ayahuasca talk? Is it lack of education, lack of interest, what is it do you think?
It could be lack of education, lack of understanding, because most people probably are clueless at the rainforest. A lot of those festival goers, they're just young people out of college, and who knows, sad to say, most of them are probably absolutely clueless that there's even a rainforest that's being destroyed, but another high or the latest, that's, novelty of wow, you can actually have these experiences, and, we're trapped in these concrete jungles, and, we can actually break out of the confines of our mind, experience God or something sacred or something divine, but that's the way through, the medicine. And also there's a lot of articles, a lot of people talking about this. That's why, in my latest blog, The Delicate Nature of the Ayahuasca and Yahweh, I had that comment about this, just one of gazillion articles that have been published, but this one specifically was in the New Yorker magazine, which is, we could say probably, I would say it's a mainstream magazine to some extent. And and it was called the latest drug in the age of kale, about how tech workers and Silicon Valley, and that's and it said in there's hundreds of ceremonies per night. I don't know how they come up with that conclusion, but going at any given night in New York City, there's hundreds of ceremonies going on.
Wow, that's insane.
That's what it said in the article. I don't know. It wasn't verified with any how they came up with that conclusion. But
I have a feeling it might be true. Just because from a media person, observe from my media hat on, and because I was at the Denver Psychedelic Science Conference in June, and there was a 12,000 gathering in one convention center, and I remember speaking to different people, and they said that some of the rooms that delivering talk, guest speakers delivering talks on the original wisdom, the lineage, and all of those things, they were empty. And when someone was delivering a talk on harm reduction, how to take ayahuasca, how to, all these integration and all these kind of talks, people were queuing outside. It was overpacked.
It reminds me of that video of that Pink Floyd, Echoes, when they filmed it at Pompeii. Have you ever seen that, Pink Floyd? No. They had to hire 4 different independent sound engineers, and the government had to they spent crazy amounts of money just to get the Italian government to give them the permission. And finally, all the sound engineers basically, no, it's going to be fine. It's not going to their speakers won't make all the artifacts crumble. And so they played this concert just for the gods, basically Pink Floyd, Echoes, It's called at Pompeii. There's no one there. It's like the ancient Roman amphitheater.
Right.
Just going off without shirts on, super casual, Pink Floyd's. This reminds you that hopefully those people just spoke, because I'm sure there's a lot of spirits in the room listening. That would have been a cool video. Some like traditional elder in full regalia giving a talk to an empty room, but like with just acting like it was full, because it probably was with the spirits. Ultimately, it's just a big joke.
Yeah.
A friend of mine was asking me the other day, like, aren't you concerned about all the ayahuasca ceremonies going haywire? I was like, no. He's like, how come? Well, yeah, I am concerned. That's why I write these articles, because to help guide the Yahweh someone. But the reason why I'm not that concerned is ultimately some people are dumb enough to want to get themselves kicked around like a soccer ball. That's their problem. But the true issues are much deeper than what we need to be concerned about. Because ultimately all these things, like, the Humpty Dumpty fell off the wall and all the king's horses and all the king's men couldn't put Humpty Dumpty back together. But those people, like if you climb up onto the wall, the psychedelic experience, you fall off, basically, and you get shattered. Ultimately, it's, it's a setback, and, there's ways to prevent that so that you can, but those experiences too help people to take life more seriously, pull themselves back together when they integrate, when they what really happened to them and why that happened. Then they become much wiser, much deeper human beings. So, I mean, the plant medicine, I think eventually, even though there's a lot of crazy stuff that happens, and there's more and more people, trying to direct this in an auspicious way, providing information for the sincere seekers to study, so that, because there's, like, according to different traditional guidelines, there's ways to use these sacred plant medicines so that they only cause positive effects. There's no need for all these to let yourself become some like ping pong ball of like random spirits, you know who they are, that love to kick things around to see if they'll wake up through some hard shakings, like ultimately it helps everyone, people to become deeper human beings. So that's a good thing, but there is ways of avoiding setbacks for sure.
Yes, absolutely. Jonathon, I really appreciate this blog, and this is why we're having this conversation. I want to just share with our listeners, I mean, the link would be in the show notes for you guys, but this blog is literally everything. It's the summary of where we are in the psychedelic renaissance, that we'd like to call it. And I see you, Jonathon, as just coming in and demystifying it all, like coming in and just messing up the whole, the direction of the trajectory of where we're headed. And you come in and you counterforce, like force of nature, with this information. And the name of the blog is, you named it, The Delicate Nature of Ayahuasca and Yahweh. So please, let's dive in. And I'm really excited to talk about also, you have this real deep understanding of the spirit and the physical and the everything in between, and which is very rare to see someone balanced in this, because sometimes I meet ayahuasca facilitators who are fully into the exorcism and, like you said, more of the perpetual darker, like let's take out entities and all this kind of like almost like fantasy world. And then you have the other side, the medical, the therapeutic, the medical. No, only, psychiatrists and the doctors should serve it in this cleaned, desensitized spaces with, monitors and stuff like that. It's a crazy, wild, wild west out there, right? So I think your wisdom is highly appreciated and needed at this moment. So please tell us, for our listeners, let's say if they've just stumbled upon ayahuasca, because you sometimes say ayahuasca, sometimes you say Yahweh. Let's start there.
Okay, yeah. One, just before answering that question, one thing that came to mind when we were speaking, like when you're mentioning how I come in to demystify it. Don Pablo Maringo, who I was blessed to have the friendship with, the visionary painter from Peru, he spoke to me once about explain the vision, one of the visions of the Cerro Punta, the phantom boat. And so at first he said the Yahweh, or the ayahuasca pot, is covered in a mist and you can't see the designs. But when the spirit vessel comes along, it parts the mist. And then all the muses with their harps and all the spirits of the water come, and all the spirits of the forest come, and everything appears and can be seen. So you need that energy to come, or else we're just looking at the mist. We're just like tranced on the surface of like oil and water mixing, just the sheen instead of the deeper content of what this is really intended to show. But yeah, the ayahuasca and yahe is they're two different traditions. They're similar plants in the sense they have the same, we could say, base plant or the mother plant, which is the vine. Taxonomically, nominated as Beni stereopsis copy. And so of the ayahuasca vine or the yahe vine itself, there's many varieties. And some of there's ancestral variety. Many varieties have been lost too, as well, too, from human migrations in the Amazon. But there's a lot of ancestral varieties, and that's a whole other phenomenon. And then the admixtures, there's an array of admixtures. And the two most principal ones are either Psychotria viridis, Chakruna, or also known as Amiruka Panga, Samairuku Panga. In my book, I explain the names, the meaning of the names, the beautiful names. Chakruna means, Chak is bridge, and Runa is person, so it's the bridge person. But Runa is a very deep word. It's not just person. Runa in the indigenous Quechua cosmology or way of looking at the world, Runa is a couple, a man and a wife, or an elder, or a human being who's basically balanced internally. That's why, like, sometimes young leaders, if they go to a meeting, they can't go. If they're not married, they have to bring their sister or their mom, because they won't even be paid attention to if they go alone. If they're like under a certain age, they're not considered Runa. So Runa is like a whole being. So it's that whole integrated being, the bridge of the being. So it's also like the bridge between spirit worlds. Because the Quechua name in Ecuador, Amiruka, for that admixture, the Psychotria viridis, is Ami is like, or Samai is wisdom, but Ami means like sleepy, like dormant wisdom. And Ruka is old, or from Ruku, old. So it's Samai Ruku or Amiruka, which means like old wisdom leaf. So, and then the other admixture that's used is the Diplopterus caparana, which is a vine in the same family as the Banisarapsis copy, the Malpighiaceae family. And this is, in Peru, it's known, some of the common names are Chagro Panga. In Ecuador, Chali Panga, which is a nice name because Chali comes from two words. Chali means kindling, like the small wood that's used to start the fire. So it's like what's used to spark the flame. And then Chalina is like something that you cloak yourself with, like a shawl, a tunic. So it's which also is not just like something that keeps you warm, but the tunic represents like your wisdom, your cosmology, how you got the way you live your life. So it integrates the visions and incorporate into our everyday life, like a cloak that you wear. Like, so there's a lot of the indigenous languages are highly symbolic. Basically, one word can mean many different concepts. One word literally can represent an entire cosmology. You can talk all day about one word. Ayahuasca and yahe are different traditions. In my book, I call them the indigenous science of ayahuasca and the indigenous science of yahe. They're different. The yahe came from the Western Tucanoan language-speaking groups. At the turn of the century, before most of these indigenous populations perished from illnesses they had no immunities to, entire clans disappeared. The Tetete until the 1970s still existed. They're gone now. Before that, at the turn of the century, many clans vanished of Western Tucanoan language-speaking groups. Today, they're an ethnic minority, highly reduced. There's mainly the Payaguaje and the Piaguaje, and a few others too. And they're known as the Sequoia or the Siacopai. They learned the tradition of Yahe from the gods' multicolored people, a legion of divine immortals that, in a very remote wilderness area, taught everything that the Sequoia know about the traditions of Yahe and all the different ways of using it, such as the sunrise renewal tea, where you wake up at 3 a.m. and drink gallons and vomit and vomit and vomit. And then the regular Yahe water, which is just the way most common ceremonies are done as basic education cleansing. And then the Yahe, or the Weasiko Yahe, the very thick Yahe, which is used for graduation ceremonies. They taught him everything. And that got, but the ayahuasca traditions, they were originally, according to Don Pablo Maringo, brought forth by the Inca, which makes sense because ayahuasca is a Quechua word. But it was a very specific group of Inca, the Inca priests, the Shidis. And these Incas, they received it from the grave of Manco Capac. Manco Capac and Mama Oakley were the founding progenitors of the Inca people. One legend says they were taken out by Huiracocha, the sun god from Lake Titicaca. And they were given the golden rod, and where they placed that rod, where it sank straight down, is where they were to build their city. And that's where Cusco is today. And in Cusco, there's a specific spot where supposedly that occurred. So from the grave of Manco Capac, who's believed to have lived to 800 years old, comes the ayahuasca and the chacruna plants. And then, there's very different aspects of these traditions. Like so Manco Capac gifted these plants. First, he summoned his wife. But when she saw him rise from the grave to explain to her how to use these plants, she was startled, is what the legend says. So he summoned one of his disciples named Roca. Roca learned, and Roca is the first ayahuasquero, according to the Quechua Indian traditions of the Inca. And then since the Incas had a lot of intercultural change with other groups, but specific, like they taught different Amazonian groups the ayahuasca traditions, and the Hunicui, the Ashan Inca, and the Shipibo, and then the mestizos, and then the foreigners coming to learn, and then also from the indigenous blacks that then founded ayahuasca churches in Brazil. So the ayahuasca tradition is a syncretic mix of many different. It's been passed down and transformed to adapt to each. So there's lots of aspects, like the dieting with different kinds of plants, and sometimes ayahuasca brews will add in a lot of other planta maestras. But the sequoia or the traditional Yahweh brews are only 2 plants, and they also pound all the bark off too as well. So it's less tannins, which makes it less vomitive. And that's because in the sequoia Yahweh tradition, first they vomit a lot to clean out, and have the body come closer to the medicine. And I'll tell you, the renewals can be wicked strong too. Like you vomit, and then suddenly you're like the full DMT land for half hour, and then you're eating breakfast at 8 o'clock in the morning. You can have very strong visions with the sunrise renewal tea, but it passes quicker. Some sequoias won't even drink the strong Yahweh because it lasts too long. And they like to wake up in the morning at 3 a.m, vomit, renew, have cool visions, and then be on back to work, So
is there a reason? Sorry to interrupt. Is there a reason why 3 a.m.? Is there what's the intention behind 3 a.m.?
There is, and that brings up a good point, and I'll get to that. But I'll get to that more. But to answer specifically that question, that's at 3 a.m. is when we could say the peak of the energy from midnight to dawn. It's the halfway point between dawn and midnight. And so it's even at midnight is when the yin energy of the darkness of the night starts receding, and the first energies of day start rising like that. But at 3 a.m. already, there's more of a balance. So that's the time of harmony between the dark and the light. And that's a time when it's believed that celestial spirits descend or ascend, because there's no up or down. It's in the holographic reality, but let's just say descend because we look at heaven as above. But that's when we can just say that's when the heavenly spirits enter the ceremony lodge at that hour. And that's a very important difference between, and that's what I speak about in the blog, is about this phenomena of the hourly clock. And while this is spoken of, and I've heard it being spoken of by the Sequoia, it's kind of similar to acupuncture. Like the Mayans have a rudimentary type of acupuncture. They know quite a bit about meridians and use different thorns to stimulate points. But no one has taken it as far as the Chinese when it comes to acupuncture and the study of the meridians. And the same is true with the hourly clock. It's very precise information there related to the traditional Chinese medicine. But we have to remember that traditional Chinese medicine comes from ancient shamanic Taoism, and it just found a way to modify itself so it could be accepted in the modern time, and not, and even though a lot of schools of traditional Chinese medicine are not going to get anywhere close to learning what the old school Taoist masters know. They'll learn different peripheral aspects that are like, and so that's it's eloquently elaborated in the traditions, and especially in the 5-element theory, and in traditional Chinese medicine talks about the hourly clock, because different organs, have, and you can tell, diagnose different people's circumstances depending on like if they feel more sleepy at certain hour of the day, or certain things that they're undergoing during certain hours of the day relate to deficiencies or maybe too much stimulation of certain organs. So that goes back to this phenomena of basically ayahuasca, for the most part, is a medical tradition. Like originally it was, they used it so that they could have, and that's Manco Capac, the founding father, when he rose it from his grave to teach Roca how to use the ayahuasca, he says that you could have the wisdom that I have, right? And Manco Capac lived to 800 years old, and according to legend. But now in modern times, really for the most part, and ayahuasca, especially in the Amazon, has been used as a medical tradition. And so the maestro, the curandero, or the yachak, as they say, is the name of a Quechua Indian Yahe drink, ayahuasca drinker, not what they call a yachak, which means yacha is wisdom, someone who embodies wisdom. They do their healings like basically from sunset to midnight, and the patients for the most part won't drink the ayahuasca. Just the maestro drinks, maybe a disciple, and they use the ayahuasca to summon and work with elemental energies or primal energies or doctor healing spirits, basically, or just spirits, basically, because these spirits can be used, they can be channeled by a skilled practitioner of this holy art to heal pretty much anything, really. But that's been now, so it's important to understand that ayahuasca makes everything, when you okay, well, I'll just backtrack a bit. So at 3 a.m., the ceremonies of Yahweh are really more of like I would classify them as a Dharma school. Because, why do I say this? Because they were taught by God's multicolored people, divine immortals, so that the sequoias could recuperate their original unadorned nature. And so that's kind of more like what Dharma is about, like, embodying a heavenly way of life. So Sequoia Elder will heal because they can, and they'll do it laughing too, because they're just following their Dharma, and they won't charge money for it. Even in traditional ayahuasqueros will never charge, but it's always expected that the patient has to give something or stay and volunteer. I saw one time a foreigner was asked an elder master to do a limpia on him, but didn't know you're supposed to always give a prenda, an object. So the old master took his cell phone out and started rubbing his cell phone over the body of the patient. And the later was like, "Did you see that? He rubbed me by the cell phone shaman." That was amazing. Like, he rubbed a cell phone over my body. Like, whoa, what was going on there? So I explained to him, the thing is that you're supposed to give anything, a coin, $1, a bandana, or like a gift, usually a little bit of money, and then symbolic, and then they rub that over your body, because what that does is it makes so that there's an energetic exchange, and they believe that the illness that the patient has doesn't jump onto the shaman. And so in this case, since he didn't give anything, they're very compassionate beings, so they're not going to go like, "Where's my prenda?" None of that. No, they just bust out their phone or something, or watch, rub it over your body to simulate that, for the spirits to be happy. Okay, no, this guy is, but then it's up to the patient, if they get better, to later go pay something or volunteer at the house of the elder. But the sequoias, basically, the way they use, they're all too aware of the different energetic realities. So from sunset to midnight is when the elemental spirits come out, like different terms in the traditional Chinese medicine phenomena related to these times of the day are called, I have it on my blog, just a few that I found from a website that interpreted some of the ways that the hourly clock is looked at. Like sunset is like 9 o'clock at night is like the time of dismemberment. Like most people, when they drink ayahuasca at that time is when they're being crunched hard. If they drink at 6 and the brew kicks in, you're being swallowed by the boa, reticulated. But this is the time when the elemental primal energies come out. So every noise that occurs under the influence of the ayahuasca is like an invocation. Most people don't realize that. A lot of people don't handle this with the seriousness it takes. The ceremony Yahweh, for example, has a very clear understanding of that. And even in traditional ayahuasca context, like I used the analogy of like at a renowned concert hall, if you're going to go see a famous, pianist, everybody would be well seated. When everyone is quiet and well seated, some moments later, out comes the pianist and the concert begins, So that's how the Yahweh likes to be handled, because we're dealing with the most profound consciousness on the planet. Ayahuasca is can outsmart these new quantum computers. My friend asked me the other day, what do you think about artificial intelligence? I said, I thought about it for a while. I said, it's like a horsefly on God's ass. Basically, like the ayahuasca is like the master chess player of all masters, the invincible chess player. And if you're not playing any games with it, it can show you all kinds of things. But if you have and most people aren't even aware that they're playing games because they don't even know what playing a game is, because they're not raised with a sacred spiritual cultural way of life.
I'm so happy you touched on this.
Yeah.
Because this is like a really huge conversation about approaching these medicines with reverence and respect and understanding. You said in your blog that every ayahuasca ceremony is going haywire. Do you think that could be because of people gathering, not understanding even their own intentions? Because we have, there are things that are internally within us that are hidden from our perception. So sometimes we don't even realize the lack of coming into the space of the realization of what we are communing with. That realization.
For sure. And there's also, that's why these guidelines are to help prevent things, because, there's a lot of reasons why ayahuasca ceremonies can go haywire. It's not that they all go haywire. And for the most part, it helps people, like I was saying earlier, ping pong them ball, hopefully back onto a good track. But there's also, I have met people that, are, basically pretty shattered and have taken quite a while to recuperate. And that's not a good thing, ultimately, can completely set someone's life off course. And the humble, sincere people that there's people that could, use a whooping and get their butts, set back a bit to learn. But some people, that happens to them, and I feel sorry for them. Like, no, you could have avoided that, And then other people that they start learning the tradition of becoming like facilitators. And then when they gain a little bit of knowledge, if they don't follow certain protocols, it gets snatched for them in seconds, and then they're scared to drink. I know people that won't drink anymore. That's it for me, But if you follow the guidelines right, you can drink your whole life. My maestro, bless his heart, just passed. He was Don Cesario, Diego Piaguaje, great man of men, one of the most beautiful, wholesome human beings that I've had the holy honor of ever meeting. He was my teacher of this tradition. I lived 5 years with him between 1995 and the year 2000, then went back many times. He passed right on Easter Sunday this March at 120 years old, and drank stiff his whole life. So he, you can drink this your whole life. You just have to have the protocols down pat. And so basically the situation is that from sunset to midnight come out the elemental spirits. Those are the spirits that the curanderos use to heal, but they use those to heal because they're graduated. What does it mean to graduate? It means to basically connect with the celestial spirits, with the divine immortals. Once you have consecrated, which another way of looking at that means to basically embody universal law, align yourself to universal subtle way of life, to the integral universal law. Once this consecration has been made, and then these people can use, because they have they devote themselves to healing the people, to helping people. They have a purpose. So there's a consecration and a purpose. That has to then that has to be just but both the consecration have the purpose have to be justified in the eyes of the divine immortals. The only purposes that are even noticed by the divine immortals are to merge with them and to help ameliorate basically the conditions of all life. And so if they're not according to those purposes, then it's not, going to be recognized or supported by the celestial spirits. And so once
sorry, I have a few questions, if that's okay, Jonathon.
Yeah, of course, please.
This is so interesting. So the graduated medicine facilitator, not shaman. You're not talking about shamans. This is something else, like they almost like. Does that mean they summon the celestial spirits because they are aligned? And what's that alignment look like?
I'll share more about that in a little bit. Basically, okay, well, no, that's a beautiful question. Thank you. Well, the way the sequoias do is usually through dietas, the dieting out in the wilderness, long period, extended dieting. Dieta is basically a Spanish word, but what it really means is practicing energy concentration. So they have to concentrate their energy so much it's almost like a magnifying glass. When if it's off course and it doesn't direct the light properly, it just kind of diffuses the sun. But if you get it precise, you can start a fire with that. So it's like that. You have to. So the dietas are for concentrating the energy. Traditionally, the dietas, they would go into the wilderness and then they would use ayahuasca to prove the veracity of their dieta. So if they met celestial spirits through the Yahweh ceremony, then their dieta was basically accomplished. And then otherwise they'd have to continue dieting. And there's many levels of graduation. There's like so many, but like for one of the things, like one of the examples of is not so much what they do, what these people do, but the circumstances that surround them. So like always, a graduated maestro will have a very rounded personality. There's no scheming or conniving. These people are sincere, oftentimes even too sincere for this brutally, savagely off course, epically corrupted society that we're part of. The level of corruption is so deep. Most people that consider themselves like wholesome beings are corrupted beyond measure and are clueless about that. And but that doesn't mean no one's here judging anyone. But if you want to open your eyes and see things what they really are, But a lot of these, basically. A good maestro doesn't hold any discriminations against anybody or even would never dare make opinions even or judgments really, because they know the complexity of the psychology of the human mind. And it's impossible to judge anything or even make opinions on anything either. So it's a different kind of person that for the most part, since the world is so corrupted, they usually might go in hiding. Like there could be the guy, the baker, everyone, the grandmother could have met him 1,000 times and never know that that's the wizard, high-level master disguised as the baker, for the most. So and then, there's other people, there's different levels, there's multiple levels. It's a beautifully interwoven fabric, the reality behind these things. And so what I was saying is that one of the ayahuasca has been transferred into the West now. It's kind of been transferred as maybe an enlightenment tradition, but it's really a medical tradition, but without the graduated maestros. So people don't realize that any sound made, and especially if certain protocol, look, every spirit in the multi-universe wants this. You take this out right now, you open this right here, and everything is there looking at it. And then most people are clueless. They're just singing songs around the campfire. For the most part, our natural unadorned sincerity is good, makes it where the spirits are inert. They can't do anything for the most part. But then there's sometimes when there's certain transgressions that occur, and then those spirits can start tampering with the ceremony. So the elemental spirits that come out from sunrise to midnight, they're still closer by. They're bound by duality, so they can do good or they can do harm, but for the most part on their own, they don't do anything. They're just inert. The maestro directs them to either heal or do harm. And there's been schools of maestros. It's like samurais specifically set up to topple and kill shamans, but that's, maybe we could say how they got so good, because they had to protect themselves too. But it's crazy. In the Amazon, there's been schools specifically, these people have been specifically devoted to learning all the ways you can kill someone through spiritual malice.
Understand. Jonathon, quick question. So what are your thoughts on the entity exorcisms in the ayahuasca ceremonies? Is there
answer that, but I want to
sure.
summarize. So basically, that's why I say in the blog, like, people sincerely wanted to use grandmother medicine, another name for the medicine, which is very loving too and forgiving, especially if certain protocols are handled. Like, it's best to drink like the sequoias do, but stay quiet until at least midnight or 2 a.m. They drink stiff, they're having visions, but it's dead stillness, because of not wanting to invoke, and the elementals at 2, 3 in the morning, when the celestial spirits enter the ceremony lodge, and the shamans are toasty high by then, after drinking 2 or 3 times, that's when they start singing, and then everything it's like, the absolute most precious realities are shown to the participants. So the thing of exorcism and stuff, and that exists and stuff, but for the most part, it's highly exaggerated and blown off course too. Like, a lot of shamans deal like sleight of hand, like they have to like cough out a spine or like do things to like, but it can be like a psychological, like in situ setting. Oftentimes, like different maestros, they have like different tricks up your sleeve, and sometimes it could actually be happening. Other times, it's like you fake it till you make it, and it's a bit like sleight of hand, but like to kind of trigger a psychological, like, sort of in response. But if it's used like the coyote medicine, if that's used like once you meet the celestial spirits, there's 1 in a million different phenomena that the maestros can use, because all the spirits have different phenomena. All the illnesses basically have a spiritual counterpart, and so that's why this oftentimes, like, that's why, like, the sequoia, I wrote about in my book, they use the demon king, the pine hoyowati, the people heart spirit. That's like a hollow chest that's a mirror hanging there. There's a lot of profound stories related to this divinity, we could say, or deity, but this they call the spirits that cause the harm, and so that malice goes back onto the spirit, and they leave, and then that person gets healed, is one of the things that can happen. But like this, a lot of times people confuse, just like, there's a lot of things going on, and oftentimes it's not like actual spirit possession.
I tell you exactly why I'm asking you, because when people are not educated in this, or at least lack of understanding, they literally think that there is something physical outside of them, living inside of them, and doing malice. And
the thing is, they're so we're not raised with the sacred culture like the sequoias. Like, I talk about that at the end in the chapter on integration. Like Terence McKenna, I had the great fortune of being a personal friend with him and spent some quality time speaking. I clearly remember an occasion that we spoke about this, and I'm sure if we go through his podcast, hundreds of hours of raves, it'll be somewhere in there too. I haven't had the time to do that, but he said that in the Amazon, where the people are raised with the plants, the lessons already incorporated into people's life. So being such a foreign thing, and such, like, we're not raised amongst a sacred cultural way of life. And we're like, like, a lot of us are like, like, oh my God, this is nuts. Like, consumer culture, industrial revolution. We want, like, to return permaculture back to the land. There's, that whole movement that's ultra beautiful. But that still doesn't mean we're raised in a sacred way of life. Even we have that desire to return. So the ayahuasca is so foreign to the modern mind, and then, like, we have to find a justification, excuse. It's very hard for modern people to just like throw it into the wind and go, we're all one. Like, just laugh while you're dying. Like, you're not going to find that today. So we got to figure out what the hell, reaction. It's like, so that's like the ayahuasca, boom, oh my God, spirit possession. It's like, but it's just like rewiring of, like, the thing, of the mind. It could be, I'm not saying that there are rare examples of where, spirit possession does exist and it can happen. And like, good level masters are very skilled at like, chopping heads off of spirits, or bringing them, having divine immortals bring them into the sun to get burned into oblivion, or trapping inside, boxes or cages, throw them in the water. Like there's a million and one ways that like shamans, can handle exorcisms. But like most good shamans will say, yeah, it's just pretty much a joke to get the friggin' patient to go, boom, whoa, I'm healed. Like if that's what it takes, good, that's what it takes, you healed. Eventually they'll figure it out that no, it's just, so like, it's a complicated, array of realities. But for the most instances, not spirit possession. It's just like that cathartic release that's so foreign, and so they're like, and it's a reaction to trying to like just like understand what just happened. So it's quick, either the ayahuasca spoke to me, or I'm being possessed by spirits. But so a lot of the Dieta Protocol is intended to avoid those kind of things. And there's like a lot of, some people push it too hard, too fast. I had an example of a friend of mine who went to drink with his wife medicine. A lot of the people that serve it don't prepare it. If you're not preparing your own medicine, you don't really know what you have. A lot of the medicine is prepared very, very thick. They don't know that you're supposed to water it down for regular ceremonies, so they serve it out much too strong. There's all kinds of protocols related to drinking ayahuasca. It's very thick, honey-like, and then they don't know those protocols. And in the situation with this, specific example, this my friend's wife on the drive home, the first night, second night, third night, just drinking a small amount of very thick ayahuasca, nothing. Second night, nothing. Third night, nothing. Okay, it's all over. Thank you all. That was a beautiful experience. Didn't experience much, but thank you. It's been great hanging out on the drive home. Like it explodes her mind while fortunately her husband was driving, and it took her like months to come back. And he's like asking me what I should do. I said, you have to go back to the maestro. That he went back to the maestro. No, I can't help you. Like, the classic, like once they it's all fine and dandy until the shit hits the fan, they don't know what to do. So that shows the people's lack of ability to know, because what you're supposed to do is drink on medicine again. The ayahuasca itself, or the Yahweh, helps fix that person and can heal him. But you need to have a little bit of a skill set to do that. So so that's what I'm hoping to help share, humbly share this information with the hopes that those interested can, because, the objective is not to help, have people lose it on the drive home,
Yeah, I understand that. And thank you for sharing this and clarifying. So it's just another way of releasing whatever that is that we tend to attach to, like meanings, like there's physical things outside of us. But it could be the internal release of whatever that is that wasn't aware, that we weren't aware, and it wasn't available to our perception.
Precisely, it's hard to say exactly what's going on. There are cases where spirit attachments happen, and those can be cleansed with the copal incense cleanse. I have that written on my blog. There's a cleanser aura with copal, and I recently gave a talk at the International Herbal Symposium, and two women were at the talk from the Apache Indian Reservation. They came up and they thanked me very much that the information that would be very useful to them. They said I was deeply thankful to them. It was a wonderful experience to be able to share, because I've always been fascinated with the Apaches from reading, the book Watch for Me in the Mountain by the life story of Geronimo, the last Indian war shaman of North America. It's that's centuries back, but it's part of our history.
Yeah.
And there's it's easy for people to try to, like most shamans always, even in Ecuador, like in the Amazon, authentic shamans, it's witchcraft. It's all witchcraft, sorcery, and they always like to blame who did it, and this and that. And we have to be really careful not to get caught in the confines of the traps of our minds. That's why I relate, and refer to the tradition of the integral way of Tao, and where because these oral traditions of the ayahuasca and Yahweh, they're oral traditions. There's a lot to be learned. Even if you go spend 5 years amongst these people, most of them, you can only learn just a little bit or certain aspects of it. And so, a lot of the teachings are wordless teachings that the master imparts through blowing their experience onto the medicine and charging it so you can drink it and come closer to the experience that the maestros have. And then the Taoist canon, and also any, of the beautiful world heritage traditions. That's why I bring in some of the Sufi mystical poets. I say just to blur the edge of duality, you like Hafiz, and like that beautiful story by the of Persian Sufi story of the conference of the birds. I found to be very similar to describing the experience that people undergo when they start drinking Yahweh or ayahuasca. Very similar. So these are universal truths that these medicines bring up. So it's in our best interest, if we're sincerely interested to learn about this, and to acute to some of the people that have come before us that have done us the favor of leaving these treasures of literature. Plus, they make for great reading too, But Master Nee says it clear as a bell. 1 inch of attachment is 1 inch of spiritual entrapment.
I love that.
And so it's everything is and everything isn't. Nobody can say what's really going on, especially when it comes to the mystical phenomena. All we can do is try to be sincere and see what the end results are. Like if people are, leave the ceremony happy, smiling, then we know it's good. I had a lot of doubts about this when I was first doing this, and I finally was able to visit Master Nee, Taoist Master Nee, and because I saw in one of his books, The Taoist Interview with the Universe and the Immortal Realms, in the back of the book, he said he offers birth chart readings. I was like, I couldn't even believe that you could actually get to meet this person. I was like, oh my God, you can actually meet Master, and he's like offers birth chart reading. So I signed up for one. They're like, oh yeah, when he comes back from China in 6 months, they finally scheduled me, and they coordinated a visit to my mother's home in the United States just around that, and went to visit him. And that was super proper. And but I spoke to him about the ayahuasca. He was kind of mildly, like interested. I was like, yeah, it gives you visions, you vomit, and all these about the elders and indigenous way of life. I was sharing with my experience. I was living in the Amazon at the time, and I asked him what he thought about it. he said, and it was very helpful with the profound wisdom of the utter simplicity. He said, if you see that it's helping people, it's good.
I love that. So simple and so basic and so human level, right? Mm-hmm.
For sure.
I have 2 more questions. I know we're coming to the end of our conversation. Personal question. What are your thoughts on, again, this is to do with entities. What are your thoughts on people coming back from the ayahuasca ceremonies, believing that they have these entities that either attach from the other people or from the ceremony or whatever, or inside of them? And then, and then going to, then asking, like paying other people around the world from across like from another country, because we have some friends who have other healers that energetically help them from a distance to get the entities out. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, basically, like I say, if the end result is good and they're happy and they feel like, a relief, if there's like the visible results, because distance healing is a reality. People know how to do that, and some become very skilled at it. And who's blessed to know someone who can help from afar, there's a lucky person. And but ultimately, you have to judge it based on if the person is healed and if they feel fine and they come back to their normal selves. Then and these people usually that know how to do this are very humble people too, because that's an advanced traditional practice. Basically, Reiki masters can do that. And the thing with entities, who's to say? Like there's a lot of hocus, like there's a lot of crud out there. people die unprepared. A lot of animals, die when they're not ready. Like sudden deaths, and there's like lots of like wandering ghosts, and human beings have, according to the energy map that I talk about, refer to in the article, is we have a fluid communion with either one notch up, which is to like nature spirits, or one notch down to ghosts and demons. Nature spirits can go up one level to like deities, starry beings, and down. And then starry beings and mountain deities can go up, piercing through that first level of the veil between the realms of time and space and the realms transcendent of time and space to the divine realms, the immortal realms. We call it divine because they're different, but I mean, everything's divine really. But so the divine immortals, they can transcend all the realms without modifying their energy construct. So basically, human beings, we have a fluid connection to up or down. So in a lot of, there's a lot of funky stuff out there. And like a lot of times, maybe people aren't totally knowledgeable of how to protect the space, create a safe container, or people who do healings, for example, on people, if it's spirit attachment, could jump onto someone else. Like, it's a strange thing if someone's feeling totally fine and they come out of an ayahuasca ceremony, they feel absolutely bad for a long time, and they feel there's voices in their head. Who's to say it's not spirit possession? That can happen. Because usually when it's like a cathartic release, I've seen people absolutely lose it on the medicine. You have to hold them down. Little petite woman this big, 4 of us holding her down. She's and crazy, release. It's but then a few days later, they're they don't remember that happened most of the time. And then they're completely inspired, they found their path and they're on a mission and supercharged and are ready to go. But if someone it drags on for, time, month or two, and they're really feeling, off skelter, they're not themselves, the copal incense cleanse can help. And spirit possession, that can happen. That's a reality that can happen. We have to be careful to making sure that we avoid that from happening. There's many different ways that we can avoid that from happening.
Okay, thank you so much for clarifying again. And the last question I have is the factors of what are the factors that bring on ayahuasca precarious nature?
Yeah. Well, like I say, basically everything that occurs during the ceremony of Yahweh is like an invocation. So it's very important to stay quiet in the onset of the ceremonies. Sometimes if people are good enough at protecting the space, then they can sing, and it doesn't matter. If you have the ability to create the celestial shield, it's called and create an umbrella, a spiritual umbrella around the space where everyone's protected, then you can fart, shit, scream. Ultimately, as the old saying goes, for what is the shaman's patio if it's not for shitting on and puking on? So it's just then the flip side of it, if you can have a safe container, not everything goes and everything's fine, and everyone wakes up laughing in their own puke, surrounded by trash, happier than they've ever been, so it's not it's and the cup doesn't have to be crystal or silver ring. There could be a plastic cup that you picked up on the street, so it's but that's one of the things, for example, it's important to bless the medicine, with copal incense. You bless it because the copal helps is sticky. The copal sapwood helps to take off all the sticky spirits, and it invokes the celestial spirits. And it's good to you can go to a church, even if you're not religious. And by the way, the participation in ayahuasca ceremony doesn't require anyone to leave their faith either, which is something that's very beautiful about this. It can help them deepen through their own faith, discover the truth. And so you can go to a church and get holy water and sprinkle it on the room. The room has to be maybe smudged, not just smudged, but also blessed with holy water or with sage. If you have to pray to the medicine and give that intentions, treat it like a highly conscious sentient entity, pray to please your children, we've come, accept us as your children, we've come here to learn, to grow, to heal, to become wise. May everyone in the room be protected, may everyone in the room be safe. Set up altars to the directions and have fun really creating a sacred space together. And then once everything is wound down and everything's quieted down and everything's quiet, then I gotta go take a pee. Okay, go take a pee, come back, and everyone's quiet. Then I gotta ruffle and get something out of the bag. Okay, everyone got all their things. One other person. Okay. Everything's set. Finally, everything's set. Okay. Go to sleep for an hour. And then you go to sleep for an hour. At midnight, wake up. It's good to drink the medicine at midnight. not too early in the night. That way you avoid waking up or cause, because most people don't realize even the slightest movement or sound can be like a type of invocation. And then at midnight you wake up and smudge the energy really good, smudge. And then it's good. Like I like to recommend people to drink alone. You go to sleep, wake up at midnight, take a cold shower, do some exercises, smudge out really good, comb your hair, make a prayer, and then drink the medicine. So it starts coming on at 3 a.m. Yep. And then the
Wow.
Dieta Protocol, we have it on our website, therainforestmedicine.net. Read my book, but also on the Dieta Protocol, goes through like a lot of different contraindicative medications that for the most part, most people are aware of now that have to be avoided. And there's also cultural sensitivities there that help. Basically, they're all intended to help steer this to be an auspicious experience, because that's what we need. And that's the original intention of the medicine, is to empower people to awaken. So that we can try to be part of something much better than making things chaotic, at least,
Yeah, this is very powerful. And lastly, what are your offerings? I know you hold these beautiful ceremonies and sessions. Where can they find you? What's coming up for you next? Where can we find more information? I know we're going to be putting all the links in the show notes, but if you could tell us what's coming up next, if our listeners resonate with you, they can find you.
Oh, thank you so much. Yeah. Well, for many years, I worked in Ecuador. I lived between Ecuador and Costa Rica, and we were influential in helping to create this national park that's like the sapphire ring. I've never worn a ring yet, but even though I'm married, the sapphire ring. The graduation ring is like the creation of the Napo Galeras National Park. That was between 1990 and 1995. 5 years I worked, helped relocate colonist settlers, insane adventures. Like the nature was on our side, because like sometimes we had to do missions, and right when we got there, boom, there was earthquakes while we were arriving. To like say, you're living inside a national park, you're gonna have to take a hike, relocating colonists. That was crazy work. Anyway, so I love going back there because I feel I have a spiritual affinity with this beautiful spot. And I'm a botanist by training. So this spot is the Napo Galeras Wilderness. It's a 13,000 hectares we were influential in getting included into the Sumaco Napo Galeras National Park. It's at right on the equator, at the base of the Andes in Ecuador and Upper Amazon. And so we have a tour on November 21st to the 27th, limited to 12 people. We already have 5 people signed up, so there's a few spaces left. And that's going to be really nice. And we have elders there that help do different aura cleanses with medicinal plant baths and cool cleanses of all kinds. We drink medicine too. And we hike into the wilderness, and there's caves. To go inside these caves and sing together, and it reverberates. It's really nice. And that's a holy site, because pilgrims of old would go there, especially when they wanted to learn, and they would drink the medicine there. It's believed to be a place that's auspicious for the use of learning the medicine ways. And so we have beautiful ceremonies there. That's in November. And then at our lodge in Costa Rica, we were for the past 23 years, I've lived most of the time in Costa Rica. We built up this beautiful lodge. We have a hill at the back of the lodge. We call it the old hill, or the black turtle's back. And it's just an exquisite spot that we've been blessed with. I'm not sure how I got this lucky. Maybe, it wasn't gifted to me. It came from a lot of work. Lots of work. 20 years having to land the boat up, dodging waves, capsizing boats, having to haul your stuff in the midnight on horseback, like living in the wilderness, but it's much easier now because there's a road now to the end of the beach. We have Wi-Fi now and electricity, but we have this really beautiful hill with a little ceremony lodge up on the hill with the rainforest behind and the ocean in front. And that's more eco-lodge comfort. The Galeras trip is a little bit more roughing it. We have to camp out in tents out in the wilderness, but super intimate. There's hardly any bugs and no malaria in that part of the Upper Amazon. It's the origin location of the cacao tree, and it's the epicenter of botanical diversity. Then in Costa Rica is exquisitely beautiful too. We have this lodge there, and we have the Eco Lodge Comfort. People have cabins, and then we have the ceremony lodge up on the hill, and so there's people can see scarlet macaws and toucans and be a part of supporting our work through participating and receive a very enriching experience. I'm very, very honored and thankful. I've been doing this for over 30 years, and we haven't had anyone lose in on our ceremonies. So yeah, it's been rough. We've had more than one go off screaming when we bring it back in. But by the next day, they're like, whoa, just like, I've seen the light, like it's, so I know that, like, when this is handled with the humbleness, the humility, and with the seriousness it deserves, but it's also, we like to say, it's a serious joke, because we have to be jovial about it too. We have to be sincere. And that's how it was when I learned with the sequoias, like the camaraderie, the fellowship. We're here to learn. When the Yah is strong, no one's saying a word. Like, that's why the sequoias dish it out super strong, because if you cannot like lose it and start screaming, there's like, you can see that even make a peak is like the sin, basically. And when it starts coming down again, 2-3 in the morning, you start singing, and it all opens up, and people can have really profound, super ultra beautiful experience that marked their life in a positive way. The intention of this is to help people reorient their life compass. We've had people that have come on our retreats, all kinds of amazing things, that were like a computer technologist, but like, they were just doing it because of their work. And now they're like accomplished painters, like found their passions. We've had people walk in on crutches and throw their crutches away and leave dancing. Sometimes everything aligns and it really works wonderfully. Other times people just have a downright good experience. So it's all a progression. I'm happy to speak with anybody too. Like and there's also, maybe Susan, if you want to, it sounds like there might be a specific case you're talking about, because like you say about spirit attachment, but each case is very specific. Like if you'd like to speak privately about whatever you might be experiencing with someone, or anybody, I'm happy to connect. There are some things that can be done that can help.
Yeah. That's
in particular, the Copal incense cleanse is a good place to start. That's published on our blog. Yeah. So so we have the trip in November, and then we have another council gathering in January. We only do these 2 or 3 times a year. It's kind of an organic thing. But also we have the lodge that people could visit anytime, just as an independent traveler. Or if people want to do a private trip to Ecuador, and contact me. If November's not good, we can organize some fun and adventures.
So wonderful and very helpful. Thank you so much, Jonathon, and thank you for all the wisdom. I just have my own personal one last thing I want to ask you. What did it feel like taking an ayahuasca or Yahweh at the age of 12 for you?
I had a really beautiful experience. Yeah, I remember a positive experience. It was interesting because I had experienced, and it might have been basically influenced, probably was for sure, because the day before we hunted an armadillo. And they flooded it out with water in the hole, and the armadillo comes out, and they catch it, and there's dinner. And that was kind of traumatic for me, because I raised in the city of Quito, I'd never seen an animal get killed. And the next night we drank the medicine, the ayahuasca. So I saw myself going down into a hole, and the sides of it were like when there's the water lines, swing lines from the sunlight going through the water on the bottom of like a pool or shallow river. You can see the lines like that, And then I came out a hole on the other side, and I came out to this whole other world that was like a pasture land with some grazing horses and cows and trees kind of scattered distantly. And then awoke. That was the only thing I could remember. But then many years later, I went back to work in that same village. Actually, years later, we helped to form a reserve. It's still there. And I'm still in communication with this community, the Amasanga community. And we formed a 3,000 hectare biological reserve called the Eternal Rainforest of the Children Biological Reserve. It's like the only forest left bordering the park. Both sides all pasture land in front too. But it's like 3,000 acres at the mouth of the Yushin River. It's an epic spot. From that spot, I haven't been out there in years because it's a little remote, hard to get to, but you can see way on the other side this giant waterfall in the Sangay National Park. 2 huge waterfalls collide in midair. And Don Taita Rafael, the elder of the community, said that the legends of old say that with the shaman masters used to be able to, there's a teleport, there's like a worm tube where they can transport themselves through that cave behind those waterfalls up into festivals at the Andes and come back. But essentially, when I went back to work there and formed the reserve, I remembered it was much like the vision now. It's like a whole different landscape of like scattered pasture lands with grazing horses and cows and scattered trees. So in a way, it was kind of a prophetic vision. But Ayahuasca is like just like a, kind of like it forms itself like a lava clean, falls over, boom, and fall. When the energy picks up, you can't take any of it too seriously. The elder maestros say take none of it seriously. People take it way too serious, and it's hard for people because that's another part of that we're not used to having such a profound experience and not taking it seriously. There's parts of it that have to be taken seriously, like the advice that the medicine gives you. Sometimes it's hard to live up to that, but ultimately, no sacrifices are necessary according to the traditions of Tao, other than trying to adhere to an integral way of life.
And that is the end of our conversation. Beautifully executed in the last words. Thank you so much, Jonathon. It's always a pleasure having you back, and it's just so much learning. And you're the first person talked about Yahweh as the Dharma. Like it's a lifelong practice, devotion, learning that changes everything we think about the way
the medicine can wake up to Dharma. It wakes us up to a Dharma path. Ultimately, then the medicine is not necessary if you can learn certain ways aligned to an integral way of life. That's why some people can't always drink medicine. They have to make the most of it. They can drink once, boom, and they can change their life forever, and they're back on the path. In case some of the listeners aren't able to view the links, our websites are for the book is rainforestmedicine.net, and for the lodge is oceanforest.org.
That's wonderful. Thank you. Very helpful. All right. Thank you so much. And one last shout out to our Clubhouse crew, like our listeners. If you are interested in learning more and listening, the Clubhouse, the audio drop-in social platform, we're also there as Psychedelic Conversations. We have bi-weekly sessions, live, audio live, and you can come and join us, and we'll have Jonathon there as one of our teacher presenters, and you can have more chance of asking direct questions, and we'll always have a Q&A, and yeah, it would be amazing and beautiful. So Jonathon, look forward to be having more of your wisdom in our community and working together however it unfolds. So look forward to connecting again. Thank you.
No, thank you so much. It's a pleasure and honor to be on this podcast, and it is being summoned to lunch, so good time to go.
I know. Thank you, everybody, for joining us. Hope you guys enjoyed this conversation. Hello. We have a little guest on the video. It's so wonderful to meet your little one, Jonathon, and all the best. We'll see you again on the next one. Bye for now.
Okay, thank you so much. Bye.
Thank you so much for joining us. Psychedelic Conversations Podcast is designed to educate, inform, and expand awareness. For more information, please head over to psychedelicconversations.com. You can also share with your friends or leave a review so that we can reach more people. You can also join us in our private Facebook group to keep the conversation going. This show is for information purposes only, and it is not intended to provide mental health or medical advice. Thanks for listening.